Welcome to Being a Successful Leader with Carl Welty. Carl is a leadership pioneer with years of challenging leadership and consulting experience. Here's Carl with some valuable insights, practical and proven methods for being a successful leader.
Good day, Carl Welty here, your host for the podcast series, Being a Successful Leader. We have 26 episodes, a week apart, each episode going from 15 minutes to about a half hour. And the 26 episodes revolve around what I call three imperatives for successful leadership. The first being, everything starts with you as a leader. So the first is being a skillful, self-aware leader. And then you need a sound strategy. You got to figure out just who you guys are all about, where you're going, how you're going to get there, and then execute that strategy. So the second is formulating and executing a sound strategy, the second of the three. The third is you need people to rally around that strategy, that sound strategy. So you need to build a culture of commitment where people want to, they're anxious to achieve this strategy. So those are three: the leader, the sound strategy, and the culture of commitment. Right now we're on the episode about what I call charting a strategic path. We're in the middle of the whole podcast, and we're in the piece about the imperative about the sound strategy. And in that imperative, there are four main segments in building a sound strategy, setting a direction. And by the way, you want to visit my website, welty.com, and you're able to revisit or for the first time, go back and look at some of these episodes by going over to Leadership Resources, scrolling down to the podcast there, and then click on any past episode you care to visit or to revisit, and it'll pop right up for you, ready to go. Also, while you're there, my books are there, my three books, and the one that we're focusing on now is Building a Sound Strategy book, which is I call Making and Fulfilling Your Dreams as a Leader. And in there is my strategic framework model, which we're using to walk you through building that sound strategy. So check that out. You can order the book right from the website. It'll take you to whatever vendor you care to use, and just click and it'll take you right to that page. Okay. So the part here episode is about the charting a strategic path. Again, I mentioned four segments to the setting direction. The first is we covered in what I call the situation analysis part. We had an episode on that, and that's all about getting your bearings. What's going on out there in our relevant environment, our external relevant environment? You always want to start from the outside in. You don't want to be bureaucratic and start from the inside out. So you need to identify the factors that are relevant to you and your leadership team, and then identify the potential areas of strategic focus. Then you want to look inward and say, to what degree can we constructively address with our current internal capability these potential strategies? And out of there may be a strategy or two for internal improvement. So you pull the two together, and then you'll come up with a few. The whole thing about strategy is to look at the critical few and to focus. And you'll come up with maybe a half a dozen or up to 9 potential areas of strategic focus. And then you take those potential areas of strategic focus and you convert them into what I call an interim translatable actionable vision. It's interim because your vision is not static, it's dynamic. And especially when you get to your strategies, you'd want to perhaps revise your vision here and now based upon emerging new realities. But it's actionable and translatable because it's derived from those areas of strategic focus that are very specific. And what you did there, we talked about last episode, is convert those potential areas of strategic focus into when statements that represent evidences that exist when you're accomplishing your future desired state, your vision. And so your vision consists of those vision element statements wrapped in a vision statement that encompasses or summarizes the vision elements. Okay. The third of four then is you take those vision elements and you convert them into a strategic path and then also into a resultant master plan. The strategic path is just a list of strategies that come out of these vision elements. And we'll describe that in a second, how to do that. And then the master plan is sequencing the strategies and coming up with accountabilities and timelines and that sort of thing. And that'll act as your master blotter, your master document for you and your leadership team to monitor and modify as necessary these strategies as you accomplish them. And the final of the four, again, identifying the areas of potential strategic focus, turning those into vision elements, taking those vision elements, driving off of them to come up with a strategic path and then a master plan, and then the actions that'll you and your leadership team will structure to achieve each of the strategies. All right, so those are the four segments. So strategic path, what is that? Strategic path is the critical few strategic initiatives that are essential to propel you and your team toward achieving your organizational vision. The critical few strategic initiatives that are essential to propel your organization toward achieving your vision. I mentioned critical few throughout this series, and it's important because as a leadership team, you need to focus. There's all kinds of things you want to do, but the key is to pick out the critical few and concentrate on those. So it's really a strategy formulation is really a narrowing process, going from broad down to specifics and pretty soon actions. And my friend and valued colleague, Ellen McCarthy, came up with a nice metaphor of building a custom home. And your vision is more like your artist's rendering of your pitch or your sketch of your home. And then you move to your strategic path and resultant master plan. That's like your set of blueprints that you and the general contractor will use and the subs too, to actually construct your dream. And then the last is actions. That's the actual construction where they're now grading and paving and framing and that sort of thing. So think of it that as the narrowing process of building your custom home. So let's talk about first charting your strategic path, and then we'll talk about master plan. So what you want to do is to focus on the vision elements you crafted, you and your team, as part of your vision. And then for each of those elements, those statements of outcome, those one-sentence win statements, think of 1 to 3 potential strategies for each of those elements. And then the third step then is to, if proper, combine those potential strategies into like groupings, if you will. That you would want to narrow it down. You may have too many. And the fourth then is you need to prioritize is to do so. Again, the goal would be to maybe come up with no more than 10 strategies. And so here's my criteria for you in terms of prioritizing, not just for the narrowing down your potential strategies, but anytime you need to prioritize. I have 4 criteria here. 1 is importance. 2nd is urgency. 3rd is growth. And the 4th is feasibility. Importance, urgency, growth, feasibility. And what you could do is just put some paper on the wall or what have you, or just at your desk there and with your team and list the strategies down the vertical column, and across the top and the horizontal column, you can list the criteria. And it may be on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being high. You can grade each of these. So if you need that kind of structure, it's a simple structure to really get the team involved in working together and prioritizing. And then the 5th thing is you'd want to, in your strategic path, and the strategic path would just be on a piece of paper where you're going to list these strategies. But in addition to that, you may want to look for strategic themes. You may have 8 strategies, and there may be a couple of themes or 3 themes. It just makes it neat and tidy for you to work with. So look for strategic themes to group your strategies on your sheet of paper. Okay, and then label each strategic theme with just a word or 2. Okay, I'll use an example here to illustrate that. This is a nonprofit I worked with, and they really did a lot of things focusing on family life in the community. And they, working through the process we're describing, came up with 9 strategies, and then we're able to group them into 3 strategic themes. I'll briefly go through those just to illustrate. One strategic, the 3 were what to do, who to do it for, and how we do it. In the what to do, these were programs and ideas they had, a strategy around programs of interest and value that they create, ideas to help unite families was another strategy. And the third was making sure that these programs and ideas were financially self-sustaining. And then in the strategic theme of who we do it for, a couple of strategies there. One was around community awareness, to build community awareness. And then the other was the idea of really moving forward with the family concept. And the third and final strategic theme was how we do it. And then they had 4 strategies there. They had an endowment program they wanted to enrich. They were working on expanding their facilities with workout facilities and pools and recreational things for families. And another strategy was the information flow to enhance that to all the partners, the stakeholders, the staff, customers, donors. And the final one was to work with the staff to continue to encourage and build their staff. Those are 8 strategies around 3 strategic themes as an example for you. Now, it's important that you think of your strategic path as an ongoing strategy creation machine. That to me is so vital. When we talked about identity, the identity I mentioned in my model of strategic framework, that, as I described, was timeless. Who you are and what you stand for won't probably change a lot over time. But just the opposite with your setting your direction, especially when you get to your strategy, you want that to be dynamic. You want it to be a strategy creation machine. So as you accomplish a strategy, celebrate, cross it off your list, insert another perhaps. Again, you can only do so much, and maybe eliminates things as you go along or combine things or and as new issues arise, see a way to fit them into your strategic path. So that's really, really important. Ongoing strategy creation machine. We'll talk at a later episode, the importance about when we get to execution, having scheduled strategy meetings, separate those from your operational meetings and that sort of thing. These are meetings on a monthly basis, quarterly, yearly, and you do different things to be more robust depending upon the time frame, where you really pay attention to your strategic path and then your master plan. So let's move from strategic path to master plan. So what you do is you have your list of strategic strategies, perhaps sorted into strategic themes, and then you want to turn it into a master plan, which will be your main focus. This will be a piece of paper or 2 that you and your leadership team will continue to go back to with your strategic meetings. Invaluable. Think of it as your blueprint, okay, as we talked about earlier. It's your guiding document to implement, monitor, and as necessary, modify your strategies as you move forward. Dynamic process of strategy formulation and execution. So in constructing a master plan, the first thing you do is to arrange your strategies in a logical sequence. Now you have your 5, 6, whatever, 8 strategies. What is the logical sequence there? Think of, again, building your dream house. What comes first and what comes second. You may want to really get going with the master bedroom. That's a key, I think, for you, but you got to do the grading first and pour the foundations and what have you. My book is in mastering or making and fulfilling your dreams as a leader, mastering sound strategy, there's a tool called interrelationship digraph. You may not need this, but if you do, look it up in the book, where you compare comparisons as you go around, comparing each strategy to the first to the second, third, and which of these strategies is a driver, not more important than the other, and which is the result. In other words, when you add it up, a strategy may have 3 driving components and 1 receiving component, and that may be in sequence more important in sequence than one has is more a receiver than a driver. You catch my drift there. Visit that if you need that. And again, it's not the importance so much as a sequencing, which is really key as you develop your master plan. Okay, now you want to design this little piece of paper called a master plan, and I have 5 columns for your consideration. The first thing, and take a piece of paper and use a legal size. And maybe when you first work with it, hang some paper on the wall, and as a team, use it that way. And then have perhaps these 5 columns in the legal size paper in a landscape fashion. list each strategy in sequential order. Okay. And then a next column would be to assign accountability for each strategy. I call this person your strategy champion. This is a person you're going to look to really lead, to drive this strategy and be in charge of it as you have your leadership meetings, your strategy meetings, and so forth, to really ride herd on this strategy. So each strategy, a strategy champion, accountability, determine a timeline for each strategy. You can just take a bar graph kind of thing and maybe arrange your paper into quarters, Q1, Q2, and so forth, or months in January, February, what have you, across. Remember, these are strategies that won't take a few weeks. These are big deals, so it's going to take longer than that. And so you want to stretch your timelines accordingly. And you can have a planned timeline and then an actual where your strategy champion will keep track of that and trace just where you're at in terms of the actual versus the planned. Another column would be to have a percentage complete, your strategy champion. They can say, okay, I think that this is 40% complete, not just the schedule, but the quality of deliverance of this. So the quality might be a little bit different than the schedule. So it's a guesstimate, but it gives you and your team some idea of where you're at. You could also may want to add a couple more columns. One might be progress indicators. Typically, when I work with teams, we just use traffic lights, green, yellow, red, and just a signal that this is on target. Green, it needs a little work. Yellow and red, we need to really pull together on this one. We need to do some recovery work, perhaps. And then the last column would be progress notes. Okay, makes a wonderful little easy to follow blueprint for you and your team. All right, so our next episodes, we're going to talk about action planning, project planning, and it's very scalable. It needs to be scalable. One size does not fit all. And so what we'd want to do there is to scale the sophistication, the complexity, and so forth of your action plan to the complexity of the strategy to achieve it. And we'll go through that. I have a dynamite little process for you to work through the different elements, if you will, of developing an action plan, from a little bit more than back of the envelope to a full-blown, very structured project plan. So you'll want to join me next week for that. In the meantime, I trust this was useful to you. Check out the book and take care of yourself, and we'll see you next week.